meets the eye. Autobots wage their battle to destroy the evil forces of the Decepticons, the Transformers. Robots in disguise.
And hello and welcome to another episode of A Sip of Cinema with your hosts, me and Simple Andrew. That's his actual name, by the way. Live and exclusive only on ACTV. This week we have Top Gun. I can't believe we've done 18 episodes of this. Well, about to do 18 episodes already of our show. So, but here we are, Top Gun, starring Tom Cruise, our first Tom Cruise film. It was inevitable. It was an important movie back in the day when we were growing up in the 80s. One of the biggest movies in the decade, of course. Sort of set Tom Cruise up as a Hollywood superstar for the next, I guess, 3 decades. So, welcome.
Hey,
We'll start
everybody.
off. Yeah, welcome. So we'll start off like we do every week with alcoholic degeneracy. As you can see in my background, we got some High West Rendezvous Rye. Unfortunately, very expensive these days, but relatively affordable when I picked it up. So, very good rye if you're into that type of thing. And we got some Easter egg.
Triple chocolate ale Eggster. from Bridge Road Brewers.
Yes, a local brewer. Easter egg beer. If you
Easter was a few weeks ago, so
Easter is
still
pretty recent.
still within the season.
Yeah, the people are still eating Easter eggs in Australia. I mean, we
know
are.
I am.
Yeah. All right, so here's a toast to Top Gun. It introduced us to Tom Cruise's smile, his sort of brash attitude and demeanor, and also introduced us to the awesomeness of fighter jets and fighter pilots, that type of thing. So here's to Top Gun. Here's to Tom Cruise. Cheers.
Cheers. You know who else
yep.
had introduced us to Loki is Tim Robbins as well. I didn't even know that he was in this movie until today.
Yeah,
watch it again.
Tim Robbins is in it. Yeah.
He's Merlin.
Yeah. But it's not like Tim Robbins, you know.
Yeah, he's not
Like in movies.
Mr. Shawshank.
Yeah. Like he's this tall, lanky guy in movies, but in this one it's like completely different and sort of unrecognizable as well. It's more obvious at the end when he's like hugging everybody. He doesn't have a helmet on. So
he's tall, yeah.
Yeah. So we'll start off with our memories of the film. So as I said at the beginning, this was our introduction to fighter pilots, fighter jets, with different video games and magazines that our dad collected. Especially the Top Gun video game, which we'll get into. Well, actually, I might show a video of it, but but also Tom Cruise. I mean, we can't mention the film without mentioning Tom Cruise. Despite his height, he was a very prominent actor and individual celebrity within the sphere of Hollywood celebrity back in the day, especially in the 80s and the 90s, and pretty much since the days of Top Gun. So, what was your impression of Top Gun back then?
Well, Top Gun, it was, I think I know it's my first movie that we actually saw at the cinema. So that's what stands out in my mind. And just besides that, just there's a lot of cool stuff in it. I remember as a kid, it oozes coolness. Like you got these aviator sunglasses, clean cut, good looking guys, like aviation jackets, leather jackets with these badges on them, and helmets, motorbikes, cars, and stuff. So it's quite exciting. It's got those things that kids liked. So it's not just a kids movie, but I mean it's got things that entertain people in that regard.
No, you're right. It's got stuff that young guys would like. It's sort of aspirational in that regard. But I'm going to talk about the male element of it because I think it's really interesting and sort of surprising in a way. The how the men are presented in the film. I have my theories. We'll get into it later, but Top Gun released in 1986, directed by Tony Scott. So Tony Scott is a very prominent and prolific director in Hollywood. So he directed Beverly Hills Cop 2. He worked with Tom again in Days of Thunder, 1990. He also directed True Romance, which was written by Quentin Tarantino. I know a lot of people reference Tarantino when they talk about that film. Also, Crimson Tide, a very prominent movie from the mid-90s. And Enemy of the State with Will Smith and
Gene Hackman.
The Deep State, Gene Hackman, and Man on Fire, starring Denzel in the mid-2000s.
Ooh, that's a good movie.
And one of our favorite movies of the 90s, a movie that we're probably going to do sometime in the future, is The Last Boy Scout.
Ah,
So he directed that.
Bruce Willis.
Bruce Willis and Damon Wayans, wasn't it?
Damon. Yeah, Damon Wayans.
Yeah, Damon Wayans.
There's a lot of Wayans brothers.
It's a lot of Wayans to choose from. Yeah. So it's written by Jim Cash and Jack Epps Jr. So they actually got together again to write Top Gun Maverick, which was released last year. And this Top Gun film stars Tom Cruise as the hotshot fighter pilot. Kelly McGillis is his love interest. Tim Robbins, as we mentioned. Val Kilmer. I think this is sort of a star turn as well. Like, this sort of put him on the map.
Yeah.
He didn't have much dialogue, but he's probably one of the more memorable characters. Tom Skerritt as the old experienced fighter pilot. Anthony Edwards as Goose. And as we'll recognize from Total Recall, Michael Ironside as a retired, not retired, but one of the
he looks really
pilots.
young in this, like
Yeah.
he's in his 30s maximum.
But compared
40s.
to the students, like, he's one of the teachers, one of the the veterans in the Navy, in the Top Gun program. So interesting seeing all these 80s actors pop up in different movies in different roles. So yeah, it's always interesting to see the cast of these films. It sort of adds. The cast is very good. We'll just say it straight away. Like, the cast is really good in this movie. And there's even Meg Ryan. Like, Meg Ryan is like in this tiny role as Goose's wife. Yeah. So it starts off with the Top Gun theme. So everyone knows the Top Gun theme. And it's sort of this slow build, which is typical of 80s movies over the credits. But we sort of get this text splash across the screen describing the elite naval fighter pilot school called Top Gun. And then we have like this slow motion collage of images of these jets taking off on an aircraft carrier. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show some images and then we're going to talk over them. Because I thought this is these images are striking in this movie. Wait, I'm going to do something here. Yeah, I thought these images were pretty incredible to start the movie with. It sort of really sets the scene, and it's really exciting, and it sort of portrays these jets as more than just weapons of war. It's like they're almost like mechanical creatures. What was your impression of the opening sequence?
No, I agree. I feel like it's visually impressive. It's just the tones and the colors, like the silhouettes and stuff. It really it makes those the aircraft stand out.
Yeah, sort of you mentioned the lighting, so it looks like they're taking off at the crack of dawn, and then as the scene progresses, it gradually gets lighter and lighter and lighter, and so at peak lightness, I guess the engines of the jets fire up and then they take off. And I thought that was a really clever way of introducing what is to come. Like, the main focus of the film is the Top Gun school. And so the jets sort of become a character in themselves, in a way. So we see the the afterburners firing up. I thought this is really awesome, like the afterburner effect as well. And just having the physical objects of the jets on the screen. I know if it was, it would be so tempting these days if you made a film like this to have a lot of CGI, but just having the jets filmed in such a realistic way adds so much to the movie. And I'm going to talk about what that actually reminds me of. Wait, what am I up to? Like images like this, and images like this, and then images like this. Like all the those last three images, including this one, like reminds me so much of Robotech, which is like a prominent cartoon anime.
Yeah, I feel like Robotech would have taken a lot of inspiration from the F-14 Tomcat itself.
Yeah,
it's got those huge like air intakes and the wings that bend backwards that can move and stuff like that.
Exactly.
I guess the nose of the plane too, and the cockpit. They borrowed a lot.
This whole front bit like is reminiscent of a Robotech mech. So that's sort of and the way it was filmed, like how the shot is arranged where you just see the nose and the gigantic air intakes, and like I guess these are fuel cells. I don't know. Like it doesn't even look like a jet in certain respects. That's what I mean by Tony Scott sort of created this mythology or this mystique around the jets. And so that creates this sense of, I guess, fantasy aside from the reality of the fact that they're fighter jets used for, training purposes or for combat. So I thought that was an interesting way to start the film. So I thought that the opening was very awesome, very dramatic. And we sort of pan out and we see it's an aircraft carrier in the middle of the Indian Ocean. And the first thing I sort of noticed is that in the command center, everybody's sweating bullets. Like they're literally sweating bullets. Like the water is like standing out on their faces.
Yeah, I had to make that note as well. Everyone is just like everyone should be walking around at the towel or something. Everyone stepped out of the shower.
But I think that was common throughout the entire film. Like all the men are sweating in this movie, like noticeably sweaty, like for 90% of the movie, except at the end when they're like in their dress uniforms or whatever. But and so in the command center, they're talking about, oh, there's a bogey nearby. And so we're introduced to this word bogey. So we were introduced to this word bogey as kids as well. Like I thought this was like a striking word for me when I was a kid. You sort of associate the word bogey with a bad guy. And I like the way the bad guys were portrayed in this movie as well. Like the MiG fighters were completely distinct from the American fighters, with the black planes and the dark visors on their helmets and the red stars on the back of the plane. So
it doesn't specify like what country it is. It's just some unknown communist country.
Yeah,
that it implies. Yeah,
I thought that was a smart move to not associate a particular country with it, because I think that makes the movie more timeless, and then the focus becomes Tom Cruise and all the other fighter pilots instead of a commentary on a particular country. So I thought that was a good move.
Yeah.
Okay, so Maverick and Goose, they're already in the air. They're flying around. So Maverick is like the main pilot, and then Goose is like his co-pilot, sits behind him. And there's another jet in the air, Cougar and Merlin. So Merlin, played by Tim Robbins. And they've actually identified the bogey. And another feature of this movie is that there's a lot of military aviation jargon. Like they use all the big words that you would use if you're talking about this type of stuff, which most people don't understand. But when you hear it in the movie, it sort of tends to make sense after a while. So it looks like the bogey jet is all by itself, but they sort of have to do some recon to make sure. And then another MiG fighter shows up. There's two of them, and so they have to take out two bogies. And the bogies are like getting closer and closer to the aircraft carrier. So Maverick, he sort of flies in and engages in a missile lock on one of the MiGs, and then that MiG like runs away. But the other MiG that's still there, they get locked onto Cougar and Merlin's jet. And so Mav has to come in. And like to do something about it.
I can't shoot this son of a bitch. Let's see if we can have a little fun with him. Greetings. Watch the birdie. Jeez, I cracked myself up.
Yeah, so a little bit of unexpected playfulness there with in midair doing it, like going upside down and sticking the finger up at the big fighter pilot, and then taking a picture of it with a Polaroid. I guess these days people just take a picture on their phone, but it's such an 80s move to take a Polaroid picture. Like, why would he have a Polaroid camera up in the air when he's flying, in a jet? But I suppose this scene is intended to provide a clue as to the sense of playfulness and, I guess, reckless abandon that Maverick lives by. He doesn't really follow the rules. He does his own thing. He sort of tries to have fun. Sort of tries to get the most out of life, and that sort of rubs people the wrong way, especially the brass or the management, as we'll talk about later.
I feel like even though Goose is supposed to be his co-pilot, Maverick is still a bit of a lone wolf, like when it comes to like flying with other teammates.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So he does his own thing, but he's able to make connections with other guys anyway, which we'll talk about later, especially with Iceman. But so the MiG like runs away after Tom Cruise sticks up the finger. I should say Maverick, and then, but the other main pilot, Cougar, he's like freaked out. He's sweating bullets. He's having a panic attack in midair. But the worst part of it is they're actually running out of gas. Cougar's plane in midair. And so this section of the movie is sort of filmed very dramatically. So we're not sure if Cougar and Merlin's going to make it back to the aircraft carrier in one piece. So everyone's like talking to Cougar, including Merlin and stuff, but he's not responding. So Maverick and Goose, they land, but then Maverick like doesn't stop the plane. He just keeps going and takes off again. Even though they don't have much fuel themselves, they're going to try to save Cougar. And so Mav like flies next to him and like talks him out of whatever is going on in his head. And so he just tells him to stick to his wing, and then they fly together back to the aircraft carrier. But on the way, Cougar's getting way too close to the water. And so we think he's like dropping way too fast. But just before he drops into the water, he sort of glides onto the aircraft carrier and sort of skids to a halt. And no one dies. Everyone's safe, but Cougar's forever changed. And so we cut to a meeting with Stinger, the bald guy that's always smoking a cigar.
The commander.
Yeah, the Commander Stinger. So Cougar's having a meeting with him, and Cougar had like a panic attack because he's worried about his wife and kid. He says he hasn't even seen his kid yet. And so he sort of panicked and had some sort of mental turmoil, mental breakdown about, dying and then his wife and kid being alone. So he makes a decision to no longer go ahead with his career as a fighter pilot. So he quits right then, basically. And it turns out he was like the best pilot, basically, and he was on the way to Top Gun, the Top Gun school at the very least. But Maverick and Goose are outside as well because they have to get screamed at by Stinger at some point. And he's sort of yelling at Maverick. He's a loose cannon. He says his ego is writing checks his body can't cash. So he's a loose cannon, which is another phrase that I learned in the 80s. The idea of being a loose cannon. Because there's a few loose cannons in 80s movies. Like we talked about Martin Riggs. Like here's another loose cannon. Like these guys who don't sort of fit the mold or don't go along with.
Dirty Harry was a loose cannon too.
Yeah, here's a loose cannon and carried a cannon. And so we learned that Maverick has been put in the hack, which I guess is like being placed in detention twice for high-speed passes over control towers, and also having a relationship with the Admiral's daughter. And so it seems like Maverick doesn't have a good reputation within that group. However, Stinger has good news because he announces that Maverick and Goose are going to Top Gun. And that they're number one because Cougar just quit. And so they're number one now. And so this is really exciting because after he makes that announcement, we hear the opening bars of Danger Zone by Kenny Loggins. One of the most famous movie songs of all time. Like if you hear the first few bars, you know what song it is, basically.
Yeah, there's a few bangers in this movie.
Yeah, exactly. And so this opening sequence with Danger Zone was pretty awesome.
You screw up just this much, you'll be flying a cargo plane full of rubber dog shit out of Hong Kong. Yes, sir.
Out on the edge, it's always where I burn to be.
Yeah, you get the impression that Maverick is a man all about speed. He rides his motorcycle everywhere. He just needs speed at all times in his life, basically. He lives on the edge. He laughs at danger. And so after that, what we just saw, we cut to basically like a classroom in Michael Ironside. I think his call sign was Jester.
Jester?
Jester. What?
I think so.
Yeah. And so he's giving a history lesson about air combat maneuvering. And then he passes it off to what he says is the best fighter pilot in the world, call sign Viper, played by Tom Skerritt. And it turns out that everybody in that room is, the best of the best pilots. Um, Viper's going on how, like, in this program there's going to be more speed but more danger, and there's no points for second place. And then we see Iceman. He sort of makes a joke about the ladies' room. It was pretty funny. And then we cut to a bar near the base. I'm not sure if it's a bar on the base or near the base, but I think it is
must
on the
be-
base.
Yeah, I think it could be on the base.
Yeah. And so all the I guess cadets are there. Different recruits are hanging around in their white uniforms, trying to get drunk, have some fun, meet some women. And Goose is talking about Iceman, talking about how, he's the best. And there's a lot of masculine banter going back and forth. And Iceman is like busting Maverick's balls about who's the best pilot. And Mav's like, no, I like to work alone. So to your point about him being like the lone wolf. And then Iceman and Slider. So Slider is like Iceman's like right-hand man, basically. They imply that Maverick's like lucky to be there because Cougar quit, and so that left the space for Maverick. But the Maverick's like whatever, and then he sees Kelly McGillis across the way, and then he turns to Goose and he tells Goose, "You know what? It looks like she's lost that loving feeling." And then Goose gives him a look. Oh, I know what that means. It says karaoke time. So Maverick and Goose start singing "You've Lost That Loving Feeling" a cappella, by the way. So there's no background music for this sequence, which is interesting. So they start singing it together at first, and then the rest of the guys join in, and then everybody's like singing this song. And then Tom Cruise, Maverick, like starts singing like right in front of Charlotte to get her attention. And at the end of the song, he like sits down and everyone like cheers.
That's one of the more memorable scenes of the movie.
Yeah, it's one of the more iconic scenes in cinema. He's drinking a Bud in his white uniform with Charlotte. Yeah. So very, very striking scene as well. So again, we get the impression that they're not just serious fighter pilots, just focused on one thing. Like they know how to have fun. And it was sort of interesting to insert these moments of comedy or just levity, really, in such a serious film. Although it's not really serious. Like there's serious moments, but it's not really serious altogether, I don't think. And so he introduces himself to Charlotte as Maverick, not as his real name. And so she says, "Oh, did your mother not like you or something?" And so I remember when I was a little kid, I had no idea what Maverick actually meant. So that joke actually went over my head for a long, long time until the Mel Gibson film Maverick. And then I sort of figured it out by then, I think. But that's sort of a piece of trivia about me being a clueless kid watching this movie. So he introduces himself as a naval aviator. And he makes a couple of jokes about striking out with women, but she's not really all that impressed. So Charlotte as a character, she sort of acts very standoffish, very aloof. Like she can sort of banter with him. She's not intimidated by his position or his reputation or who he is, like what he does. But we're not sure who she is at this stage of the movie because she's a very important person within the context of the Top Gun program. But we have no idea, and Maverick has no idea either. So that sort of becomes a surprising revelation later on for them, and they sort of have to figure it out after that. Figure out like who they are together as in terms of a relationship. And she jokes that she hopes he's a good pilot because he'll never make a living as a singer, and so it seems like Maverick is struck out. But she goes to the ladies' room. She goes to the dunny, and then Maverick like follows her into the dunny, which I thought was an interesting decision. That's not the first thing I would do in that situation, but Maverick lives by his own rules.
Lives by the seat of his pants.
Luckily, she's not taking a piss because she's just putting on lipstick, because that would have been really awkward. So the flirting sort of takes off in the bathroom, but then she like fends him off again. So Maverick is basically 0-2 at this point, within 10 minutes. And so we cut to the Top Gun school. Jester, Michael Ironside, he introduces Charlie, the new instructor, and it's Charlotte. So Charlotte like walks down the middle of the students from behind, and she turns around. Oh, it's the same woman that Maverick was flirting with. And so it turns out she's an expert in astrophysics and fighter jets. And there's a lot of aviation mumbo jumbo, a lot of jargon that sort of the most people will be clueless over. But then as she's talking, Maverick and Goose start talking at the same time. And then she like looks over disgustedly at them. And then Maverick
she's making a point about a maneuver that a MiG can do or can't do. And so they were disagreeing, like with as they saw it firsthand that it can actually do this maneuver.
Yeah. So the maneuver is a 4G negative dive. And so they're debating about whether or not it's actually possible. And then Maverick's like, oh, I actually know that it's possible. It's too bad that you don't know it's possible. And then she's like, no, I've got top secret Pentagon clearance. Like, I know literally everything there is to know. And then he has to like describe the move where they flip the bird.
Well, thank you, started up on his 6 when he pulled through the clouds, and then I moved in above him.
Well, if you were directly above him, how could you see him?
Because I was inverted.
Wilson!
Communicating. Keeping up foreign relations. I was, giving him the bird.
You know, the finger.
Yes, I know the finger, Goose.
I'm sorry, I hate it when it does that.
That's another thing I think. I don't know if we learnt it from this movie, but the concept of the bird was something that was that was learnt by me, at least in the 80s. So we called it like the rude finger, sticking your finger up. That's what we called it back in the day.
Up yours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think I don't think people actually say flip the bird these days. Like, it's sort of a very specific phrase people used in the 80s. Whenever you stick up your fingers to flip the bird. But you can see the interaction, the banter between Maverick and Charlotte in that scene. So Maverick is quite brilliant in his own way as a character in terms of his flying ability, his knowledge, etc. He's not just some dumb meathead. Like, he actually knows his stuff and is very, very skillful. which sort of adds to his arrogance and confidence in a way, and his swagger. And so she's actually surprised he's a famous MIG insulter, which is a phrase that she actually uses. He's a MIG insulter. And she's like, "Oh, maybe I want to hear about the MIG sometime," but he actually rejects her this time, which is interesting. And then Iceman, he wants to talk about the situation. I wants to ask about Cougar. Wait, Iceman. Yeah, so he sort of wants to get a bit deeper into what happened with Cougar, but they cut to the first trial for Top Gun. And so Top Gun is sort of arranged into different trials, which we see throughout the film. And so the first trial is that they're competing against smaller and faster jets than they've encountered before. And so in the other jet that they compete, that sort of the training jet is Jester. So Michael Ironside is in the other jet, and they have to do some certain maneuvers in order to pass the test. And so it turns out that they're sort of flying through the air, and then Maverick is in front of Jester, and he can't shake him. And so Jester's got him locked on, so Maverick has to do something. And so he hits the brakes on his jet and like flies up really suddenly, and then Jester flies by underneath. And so Maverick manages to get behind him and get a lock on. And if it was a real fight, he would have blown up Jester basically. So he wins that round. But it's sort of a questionable move to just hit the brakes and then do that kind of maneuver. And so as Maverick is flying back, he sort of requests a flyby of the tower, but the guy in the tower said, "No, you can't do that." And then he does it anyway. And then the guy spills his coffee, which sort of becomes a recurring theme in the movie. And then back in the changing room, everyone's discussing what happened in the last exercise. And then Iceman, he wasn't impressed. He sort of steps to Maverick and tells him what he
What's
What's
your
your
problem, Kazansky?
You're everyone's problem. That's because every time you go up in the air, you're unsafe. I don't like you because you're dangerous.
That's right. Ice, man. I am dangerous.
Yes. So this is their first interaction between Iceman and Maverick. So one thing that sort of prominent to me, I would always remember, is Val Kilmer's teeth in this movie. The way he talks, he's always flashing his teeth like a predator.
And he's always chewing gum as well, so that's why you're also seeing his teeth.
Yeah. Like the way he says his words is like really distinctive. Like, I don't know if that was like a Tony Scott thing or if that was a Val Kilmer thing, but it made his character like really memorable and distinctive. Like the way he talks, like his mannerisms and like his suspiciousness, like his questioning of Maverick's tactics and stuff. Like you can understand what he's saying, because he's saying, like, his argument is, we're in the air, we're supposed to be a team, like we can't just go off and do our own thing, because it's like one false move and we're dead basically. Like that's how dangerous it is to be pilots at this level. And so he's like, we can't have people like Maverick stuffing things up, putting people in danger. So from his perspective, you can understand it. But then at the same time, Maverick has this, like he's this almost like this natural born pilot, as he does things his own way. But most of the time, it sort of works out, for the positive. And so you can't really argue with that. And so that's where the clash, the conflict occurs. And so outside the room, like we see the guy. So in another room, like the guy who spills his coffee is like swearing and screaming at someone in the room.
I think it was Viper. He wants to see Viper.
I was screaming at Viper, yeah. And then Maverick and Goose are in trouble again because they're like kids outside of a principal's office. And Maverick like broke the rules of engagement twice. And then when they leave, Jester and Viper talk about how Maverick is a wild card. But at the same time, you get the impression that they have a lot of respect for him because of his talent. And that Viper's like, yeah, I flew with his father, so he knows his father. And this idea of Maverick's father actually becomes an important aspect of his character because his father sort of disappeared in mysterious circumstances, and that's sort of contributing to the Maverick's reputation with on the base as well.
Yeah, that information's classified within the Navy, so he doesn't know the truth about what happened to his father. Like he
doesn't even know, and
kind
it's
of
his
like
own
got
father.
he kind of the information that he got was that his dad kind of did something bad or something, or he failed as a pilot in some way.
Yeah.
So that kind of influences, I guess, Maverick's growth or his life as being a pilot, and maybe influenced his lone wolf demeanor.
Exactly. It sort of made him more standoffish and protective of his own, I guess, reputation and safety within the same field where his father was maybe killed or something dodgy happened to him. Maybe the CIA was involved. Maybe it was some black ops operation that went wrong. You never know. So he sort of has this natural suspicion. And sort of keeps his cards close to his chest, I guess. So later that night, Goose, he's still up. He can't sleep. He just wants to graduate. And then Goose says it's like he's flying against a ghost, but Goose is the only family Maverick has got. Like it's his own, like it's his best friend. He's everybody, he's basically everybody to Maverick is Goose. Sort of sets up the tragedy that's to come later in the film. The next day, Charlie, again, she's talking to Maverick and giving him some advice about the program, and I guess his own personal advice. And she said that she doesn't actually date students. And so we get the impression that Maverick struck out once again. So we think he's 0-3, but not necessarily, because she gives him
classified information.
She gives him classified information. A date invitation. So we see the date here. 5:30. So 5:30, a pretty early date in my opinion. But maybe they want to, see the sunset. That's the one thing about this movie is that it's really well shot in terms of showcasing, I guess it's California, the sunset, the palm trees, just the lighting of different shots is really amazing. Which
even in the indoor locations as well, it's really beautifully shot. There's so many nice scenes.
Yeah, it's kind of a stunning movie visually. Visually as well. It doesn't seem old or dated in any way at all. Which speaks to the talent of the cinematography and how there's no CGI. I'll keep bringing it up, but CGI tends to date movies because CGI becomes old at some point. And so I saw this in Batman from 1989. Like the special effects are really awful. Like it's really, really bad. But if you use live objects and models like in Star Wars, then it's far less likely to become dated in a way. And so we cut to he's talking to Slider, which was Iceman's wingman, if you know. And Slider's like talking shit, but he tells Slider he stinks. And then we cut to if you're into sweaty, shirtless men, this is your scene. It's beach volleyball time. So there's lots of sweaty, shirtless guys with abs. Everybody's in great shape. So one thing I wanted to mention with this film that I hinted at the beginning was the presentation of men in this film. So there's lots of shirtless guys. There's lots of shirtless, sweaty guys in this movie. On more than one occasion, guys are walking around in just a towel. For no particular reason. And then we get this scene with the beach volleyball, shirtless guys, sweaty guys, jumping around, being athletic. So you can make of that what you will. Some people may say that makes Top Gun a pretty gay movie, but that's up to your opinion.
Not because it's the Navy.
Well, now that you mention it, in the Navy,
the Navy's always taken a lot of slack about that.
That's that sort of reputation, doesn't it?
No, even
Now that
from
you mention the Navy,
even from that era.
Yeah. But it's like, I don't know. It just seems, from my perspective, from the 2023 perspective, seems pretty gay. Like, I don't know if Tony Scott, is gay. I don't know. It just seems, I just get that impression. It's not a bad thing, but it's just something that I noticed. The way men are presented. Like we've talked about Van Damme and Arnie and Sly. Like, they're shirtless and jacked, but it's a different, I get a different sense from those portrayals of in shape shirtless guys. It's different. I'll just say
I didn't get that sense from watching Top Gun. I didn't get that gay sense personally.
Your gaydar didn't go off.
No, didn't.
Just a theory that I thought of at the time, because I'm trying to like analyze every like layer of the film. So that's something that keep coming back.
I feel like I don't know how often they were like just wearing towels, but I think
like
there
at
would
least
have been,
2 or 3
like, change
times.
rooms or whatever. But the volleyball scene, they are on the beach, sun's out. There's probably chicks around as well. So
No, that makes
gotta-
sense. But it's like when you add it up, there's a consistent theme. That's what I'm saying.
no, but there wasn't any
Man on man action. I know.
yeah, man on man, no heavy petting or anything like that. So
Or
yeah.
implications. Yeah, I know that. Like, obviously the guys are all not gay. Like that. Like, that's pretty obvious. But it's just the way the guys are presented in this movie. When men are presented in a certain way, like when women are presented in a certain way, there's usually an intention behind it. But anyway, Maverick's playing in jeans. So it's probably like hot, like running around, like flopping about in sand. He's got tight jeans on. So I don't know what's going on there, but
No, but he's the only one that had jeans on there. But at the same time, you got to remember, he keeps looking at his watch, so he knows I got a date at 5:30. I gotta wear my clothes there and play volleyball, and then I gotta look good. So he can't like rock up in his shorts and a singlet.
Well, that's the other layer of it, isn't it? Like, he's literally going to flop about playing beach volleyball for I don't know how long, in his date clothes, and then go straight to the date.
Well, I assume that he would have been playing with the top on, but he had to keep his shirt like sweat free
It
knowing
doesn't
that he's got
matter. His
this
shirt
date.
isn't sweat free once he puts it on. His shirt's not going to be sweat free when he puts it on. Not only that, he puts his jacket on and then rides away. So he's going to get an extra layer of sweat just riding back to Charlie's place. Like, I thought that
No,
was
he should
unbelievable.
be getting dried that way.
Oh,
He's
'cause
on the
it's a bike.
motorbike and he's got the
Actually,
jacket
that's probably
open.
a fair.
That's
That's
like
probably a
a
fair
hair
point.
dryer.
That is a fair point. I should have realized that. But yeah, that's actually a good point. Yeah. So Mav has to leave, but Goose is like, wants one more game. And Mav is like, no, I got to go. I got, you know. And so he rides out in his cool jacket as Take My Breath Away by Berlin plays in the background. So this is another incredible scene. Like the song and then the image of him like riding off into the distance is just unbelievable. Like it's so iconic in cinema history. And to see it like play out within the context of the movie was really incredible. Just visually stunning, as we were talking about before.
Charlie's house is her location. That's pretty sweet. Sweet spot right on the beach and sunsets, palm trees.
Yeah, that
Like,
house
doors
would probably be
open,
that
windows
house would be
open.
like that's like a $5 million house in 2023. Like that's an insane location. So despite Maverick looking at his watch all the time, he's late. And so since Maverick does his own thing and has no idea what the word boundaries actually means, he goes around the back. He like sneaks around the back like a stalker. And she's like, oh, there you are. Like she expected him to just show up, just rock up, you know, at the back door at some point. And she's just chilling in the back. Like she doesn't care that he's late.
She's picking on the food. She's hungry.
Yeah, she's like picking out the food, but she's pretty chill. And so he's like, oh, I want to take a shower, which is reasonable.
I think that's a weird request.
No, I
It's
think
like
it's reasonable.
first date coming over to her house. It could be going out for the date or something. Can I use the shower first? Can I use the shower first before we start?
I mean, I've never done it, but say you're like, there's no way for you to go back home and take a shower before a date.
But you got to think
In
of
that
it
case,
from
it'd be
her perspective, though. You got to think of it from her
Oh, yeah.
perspective. Like, so you came on this date, like you're not really trying to impress me or anything.
Yeah.
So it's
That's
like
true.
I'm not your first priority. You did something beforehand that you needed
Yeah,
to
you didn't
do.
have to play beach volleyball for an hour. Yeah. And so she's like, oh, I'm hungry, so you can't take a shower.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
And we cut to after dinner, they're like chilling in the garden. Like she has this really nice space at the back of her house. And Maverick's like talking about black music because Otis Redding is playing on the radio. And his mom like really liked that music, but she died, and that's really sad. And then Charlie asks about Maverick's father. And then he says his father disappeared in an F-4 fighter in 1965. Probably something to do with Vietnam. And he's talking about how the narrative, like the government narrative, is that his father screwed up, but Maverick like doesn't believe the official story. But at the same time, like when he finishes the story, like you get the impression that there's a lot of attraction between Maverick and Charlie. But at the same time, there's this complication because she's like basically a teacher and he's like a student. So there's like this professional, I guess, imbalance between them, which could get complicated.
I think if Charlie had a call sign, it should be Cougar. Do you think she's much older than him?
Yo,
because I know Tom Cruise is supposed to be about 24 during this movie. She looks like she could be at least 10 years older maximum than him.
This
But she still looks
this is
good.
why.
But I feel like
But
she's more
this
mature.
is why. This is why I don't think this was made by. Like, I don't think a straight guy would cast her in that role. Like, I'm like nothing against Kelly McGillis, but I'm just saying, like, to your point about her being much older, like, it
But she
doesn't
does
really.
need to. But she needs to be older to have these qualifications, though.
Mm.
So she can't just be some pretty chick that just finished university.
No, but there's a. I think there's a intermediary age range there. But anyway, so he's like standing in the garden. It's like, oh, I'm going to take a shower, and then Take My Breath Away plays up again in the background, and then what we hear is his motorbike as he speeds away. So when he says, I'm going to take a shower, I thought he was going to take a shower there, but he actually leaves to take a shower. Right? Or do you think he took a shower there? Because the next scene is
I
his
got the
motorcycle
impression
start.
that he left. I got the impression that he left.
Yeah, I think he left so he could take a shower.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't like stand.
He was saying something like, "This is getting complicated," and it looked like they were gonna like have a sex scene or something. And then he stands up and says, "I'm gonna go take a shower," and I feel like he leaves in that situation.
Yeah. I think he leaves too because there's some sort of tension building up. So it's not really about the shower. Like the shower is more about like an excuse for him to get out the house, basically. So he goes back to the base and Charlie's there. And they sort of discuss what just happened. And she says she doesn't normally invite students to her house, but but she still has a job to do. She takes the job very seriously. And then we cut to it's family day on the base. And Goose's wife and kids show up. It's Meg Ryan, mid-80s Meg Ryan, with the short blonde hair. And then Viper and Charlie are holding a class. And they're critiquing Maverick's maneuver. So I don't have a picture of the class, but this is an interesting scene because they have like a couple of computer screens in the background.
Yeah.
And they're sort of showing different maneuvers on the computer screen. They're like talking about it.
It's like a 3D construction, but it's like really bad. Really,
yeah, it's like a
bad
wireframe.
technology. Yeah, like a wireframe 3D map, I guess.
Yeah. It looks bad from our perspective, but it's probably like really expensive technology back then. So they're like, so Maverick's like sitting there and they're like critiquing his performance. But amidst the critique, everyone's like super impressed. Like, what's his name again? Jeez, I forgot his name. Iceman's right hand, like wingman.
Slider.
So Slider leans over and says, that was like one of the most impressive things I've ever seen.
Gutsiest move I've ever seen.
Yeah. But at the same time, like Maverick like leaves in a huff. Like, you can tell he's a bit pissed off because he jumps on his bike and like speeds off down the street.
Lieutenant.
And I just don't want anyone to know that I've fallen for him.
So you may recognize
Charlie driving Reggie's car.
Charlie's driving Reggie's car. Porsche 356 Speedster. So that's a real Speedster, not the replica that Reggie was driving. So she flies after him, like almost causing an accident. And then she berates him. But at the same time, she's like super impressed with his flying, and she's fallen in love with him, blah, blah, blah. And then we get this slow motion, like artistic love scene, like with a blue theme. The next morning is gone. Of course, he's gone. But there's a message disguised as a really bad, like paper airplane. Like it's one of the worst paper airplanes. we've ever seen.
Maybe that one, like, maybe it flies really far.
Could be. Because it's like this
just
big
the
fold of paper on the side. It looks terrible.
yeah, it's like the back is like a big. Maybe that's like weight distribution, so maybe it gets more altitude and travels further or something, further distance.
And so we cut to the iconic line, "I feel the need for speed." At the start of the next training mission. Yeah, I remember saying that line as a kid. It's one of those lines kids really love because it rhymes and really cool. And so we learned that at the next training mission, Maverick is 2 points behind Iceman, so they're getting ranked on a points-based system with each exercise. And so Viper is actually flying with him as part of the exercise. So Viper, as you recall, is the main guy. Like he's like the Michael Jordan of flying, basically. And so this time is Hollywood and Maverick versus Viper. And so Maverick wants to go after Viper. Like he wants to take him down really badly. And so they're literally like going head to head with Viper. And so Viper's
so Maverick was supposed to stick with Hollywood,
Hmm.
stay on his wing as support, and they were going to follow. Was it Jester, which was the other bogey jet, and so Maverick does his lone wolf thing, and he wants to get the big dog Viper.
Yeah, he wants to get him. But it doesn't turn out the way he wants, and Jester gets a lock on Maverick, and basically he loses that round. And they're back in the showers. another showers towel scene. Jester tells Maverick to never leave your wingman. And then Iceman talks about how he's dangerous because of his attitude. But then it turns out that Iceman didn't win on that trial either. So their points are still pretty close together. And then we get some contemplative music as Maverick looks at a picture of his father, which looks like this. So his father with this plane in the background. So that's Daddy Maverick. And then we cut to sort of this family scene where Goose is singing Great Balls of Fire by Jerry Lee Lewis. So that becomes like Goose's theme song, basically, in this movie is Great Balls of Fire. But then while he's playing, like Charlie, Goose's wife, and Maverick, like they can talk, and Goose's wife's talking about how Maverick is going to go home. Like Maverick, like always goes home with the hot women. But Maverick's like he's had enough of this conversation, so he goes over and like starts singing Great Balls of Fire karaoke with Goose and his kid. And then Meg Ryan tells Charlie that Maverick is in love with her. And then they go over and start singing Great Balls of Fire. Like everyone's singing Great Balls of Fire. And then we get a really cool shot of him like riding the motorcycle on the marina, like past the boats and stuff. That was really awesome. and then the next trial is and then we're up to the next trial, and the Top Gun trophy is still up for grabs. But we get the impression that this is one of the big trials. Like you got to win this one if you want to win.
Yeah, I feel like this was like the last trial.
Yeah. And so Iceman, like, he's like in the way. Like while they're flying, he's in the way. Like Maverick wants to take on the target, but Iceman's like, no, give me 15 seconds, give me 10 seconds. You know, because he wants
Yeah,
to.
I can understand why, because he wants to get the points himself.
Yeah.
Because he knows that if he gets out of the way, then Maverick's got a clear shot and it's game over.
Yeah, but Maverick wants to take a shot. Maverick wants to take the shot, but Iceman is in the way. But then one of the jets flies off suddenly. And
Yeah,
then that
that's
creates
Iceman's jet.
Iceman's jet flies off, right? And then that creates a jet wash, which is basically like a mid-air vortex of air, right? Which is created by low pressure. The low pressure air expelled from a jet engine. So that's like the technical definition of what a jet wash is. And so there's a pressure differential between the air that the Maverick's plane flies into and the air surrounding the plane. And so that causes Maverick's plane to spin. So his jet's out of control. They've lost both engines. It's like flat spinning.
Engine 1 is out. Engine 2 is out. Goose, I'm losing control. I can't control it. It won't recover. Shit.
Mayday. Mav's in trouble. He's in a flat spin. He's heading out to sea.
Canopy!
Yeah, so we get the tragic death of Goose. So I remember as a kid, this was pretty tragic death, sort of unexpected.
Oh, definitely, yeah. No, it was a very significant scene for me. I'll let you continue.
That was like as a kid, it was sort of really unexpected and sort of jarring to see Goose dead in such a way. Because you expect them, like they're all like sort of superheroes in a way. So it's weird to see that one of them could actually die. That was my impression. What was your remembrance of?
No, like as a kid, I don't remember crying about it, but
Yeah.
I remember it made me really sad. I think it could be like the first time I was affected by a death. Like it wasn't even a real death, but I feel like I would have been 5 years old watching this.
Yeah,
the first time. Yeah, so I just I felt like I lost something, like that was close to me. So it was really weird that the movie affected me that way as a child.
Yeah,
like I like just thinking back now, like, and you also like just said that you also felt that kind of emotion.
Yeah, because you don't expect that type of thing to happen in this movie. Like there wasn't any hint that they were in any real danger up to that point.
Yeah, I think
Like,
it was
Maverick
just
always
because
got
it
out.
was so sudden as well. It was really unexpected.
And it was like a trial run, like it's like an exercise for points. Like it's not actually like a battle with another country. So you wouldn't expect that type of thing to happen, but that's why flying is so dangerous, I guess. Like anything can happen at any time. So Viper is having a discussion with Maverick in the bathroom. And Maverick is like blaming himself basically. And then Viper's like, don't worry, like you have to realize that these things happen in combat situations. So you can't sort of take it personally, like, which is understandable because you can't, like, Maverick didn't create the jet wash. Like, it's just a freak accident. And so back at the base, actually no. So Maverick actually runs into Charlie, and he's explaining to Charlie that it was all his fault. But in the back of the base, Goose's family is hanging out. And then Maverick takes Goose's dog tags and some of his things to give to Goose's wife. And then there's an actual hearing. Sort of an investigation and a hearing about the incident, and it's found that Maverick was not at fault for the death of Goose, which is correct. And so at the next trial, Maverick has another wingman in his jet. Another guy. I can't remember what his name, what his call sign was.
No, I can't remember.
And so, but Maverick is like messed up in the head, and he can't fly properly. Like he's not his own, like he's not his typical brash, like confident self anymore. Like he's too much inside his head. And then on the ground, because while he's up in the air, everyone's saying, take the shot. Like, what are you doing? Like, and then on the ground, Maverick yells at his partner, like, I'll fire when I'm good and ready. And then Viper's like, no, we've just got to keep sending him up there. Like, he's got to figure it out on his own. And then soon after that, Iceman, like, he confronts Maverick in the locker room. But then, like, he gives his condolences for the death of Goose. So, like, he doesn't yell at him or whatever. And then Wolfman, like, he gets on the phone and tells Maverick to, like, just quit. Right.
I thought he got onto the phone to someone else and saying that, I think, and then he was speaking to someone on the phone saying that Maverick just quit.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. I think that's what it was. Yeah, I think I was a little bit confused by that, but yeah, he sort of indicates that Maverick quit or something, but which seemed likely, but like Maverick has a lot of support on the base, so and so Maverick's at the bar, like he's being a bit of a sad sack at the bar, and then Charlie shows up, and then she tells him she's got the promotion for the job in Washington. She's like, oh, it's not your fault, and then he has to go on, and then she's like she calls him a quitter basically if he's like not going to go back. And then as she leaves, she calls him Pete Mitchell, which I thought was interesting. Like, not Maverick anymore, like, you're Pete Mitchell. Sort of just reminding him of his humanity, basically. Like, he's not just some automaton pilot Maverick. Like, he's an actual person underneath it all. And so Maverick goes over to Viper's house. So Viper's again. So Viper's house probably $7 million, like, or 10. Like he's got this incredible house on like a cliff, so it looks out over the ocean with this like all this land around it.
Back then, it's probably only $500,000.
Yeah. Now it'll be like developed like this gigantic mansion, like some like Will Smith probably lives there. And so he goes over to his Viper. So Viper is like the mentor archetype for Maverick in this movie. And his only connection to his father. And so they have this discussion. And Viper was like, yeah, I was there when your father died. And then it's like, he tells Maverick, he can graduate tomorrow. But at the same time, when you're up in the sky, you have to push it. Sometimes you have to take risks. Sometimes you have to do things that may not work out at the end in order to succeed. But ultimately, it's up to Maverick to make his own decision about whether or not he's going to continue and pursue Top Gun. And so we get another really cool montage where Maverick like rides back to Charlie's house, while the sun's setting, and we see like a for rent sign outside her house, which means that she didn't own the place; she was just renting. And then he rides off to like this landing strip, or this air base, or what's it, an airport or something. We get some incredible scenes here, where we see the sunset and the jets flying over, and his bike against almost like every scene with the sunset was really amazing in this movie. Just visually stunning. And so it's graduation day. But Maverick doesn't show up until later, so he's a bit late. But then he comes in, he's dressed up, and he comes in like congratulates everybody. But while everyone's partying, like Viper and Jester, like they say there's a crisis brewing on the Indian Ocean, and so everyone has to get ready to go out and defend. So Viper, he says, Viper wants to fly with Maverick, because now Viper's like not only a mentor but almost like a father figure at that point. And so the pilots have to give some air support to a rescue mission, a rescue operation. And it's a real thing. It's not a exercise anymore for points. And so the jets take off in a scene similar to the opening credit scene. And once again, in the command center, everybody's sweating bullets. I think they're sweating more in the second time round. But there's a bogey in the area.
I feel like it's any of the scenes that's on the aircraft carrier. I guess they're down below deck, and like there's no air conditioning at all. They're just like
no air conditioning.
Sardines in a tin, literally. Just sweating bullets.
Must smell really nice as well.
All kinds of dude sweat going on.
Oh yeah. So, but Maverick's ready this time. So he's got Goose's dog tags with him. Like he's got this sense of resolve about him. Like it's not wishy-washy anymore. And as time goes on, they sort of start counting the bogeys that are coming in. So there's 4. No, there's 5. And then at some point, Hollywood gets shot down.
He's got a radar lock on us. Right left! I'm hit! We're coming apart! I can't control it! 090-20, we're going down!
What's been hit? Shit! What's been hit? Voodoo one, what's been hit?
So we should talk about how the flight scenes were filmed in this movie, because I think they're pretty incredible, especially for the time. Like almost 30 years ago, this is filmed. Like normally you would think like the cockpit scenes where they sort of focus in on the cockpit would be really dodgy compared to the flight scenes, but they're seamless basically. Like you're not taken out of the movie by the special effects. Like they're flawless basically.
I feel like so everything in the cockpit is all real, and like any of that trailing camera angles and things, that's all real. I think the only time they used models was when the planes were blown up, or if they're falling out of the sky, and so then they would use actual plane models. From what I learned years ago already, so I didn't look this up recently. So that's what I remember is, I think it was was it Jerry Bruckheimer was like holding like these little Tomcat models and like
Yeah.
setting off explosion, not holding it, but like he'll be hanging it up and like exploding it and recording it with like the sun or certain angles to
Yeah.
make it look more dynamic and realistic. So there's a lot
Mm.
of detail that went into it, and even though it was models, the special
Mm.
effects still came across as very realistic, and even today, it still looks realistic
Yeah.
or
So it's
realistic
really-
enough.
That's flawless and it's timeless because there's no computer technology associated with it. It's just engineering and editing. So it comes down to editing as well. Like editing is really important just to fill in the gaps and to create dynamic tension. And you're sort of within the framework of the movie, like as an audience member, you're sort of caught up in what's happening. And so if the special effects suck, then you're sort of taken out of that sense of suspension and drama. But that didn't really happen in this movie, which is really amazing, I think. And so after Hollywood gets shot down, Maverick gets ordered to get into the fight. So he takes off. It's really dramatic. It's really awesome. And it's interesting that they decided to make the MiG pilots' helmets all like blacked out, like the visors like half blacked out, just to distinguish between the American fighters. It sort of made them look more sinister as well, in a way.
Yeah, you can't tell if they're like Chinese or Russian.
Yeah,
It's probably a good thing.
it's a really good thing. Like it's just it doesn't matter. Like it literally doesn't matter. It's like this Maverick story.
It's like the bad guys. Yeah,
Um,
exactly. It's good that they didn't bring any attention to it, and like you don't question it really either. It's like
No.
they're the bad guys. That's
Yeah,
it.
they're the bad guys. So Iceman almost gets shot by a missile. And so Maverick, like, he flies into another jet wash, but he manages to, like, fly out of it this time. And then Maverick, like, flies off, like he's leaving Iceman, even though he's in trouble. But Maverick, like he grabs the dog tags, like looks at them, then flies back into the fight. And then Maverick like blows off the wing of the MiG fighter's wing. And then Iceman gets shot at with a machine gun. But they actually missed with the machine gun. And then Slider gets a good shot off on the MiG. But at the same time, his plane gets hit by a machine gun in the right engine. So their plane's like damaged. And Maverick's like flying around. He's trying to get a clear shot at the MiG, but he can't. Because Iceman's like in the way. And he tells Iceman to brake hard right to give him room for a shot. But he actually misses. But then the second shot blows him.
He didn't wait until he had turn and lock.
Yeah.
He just shot it without lock.
Yeah, that's something we learned as kids as well. Like
we didn't talk about the game yet. Or do you want to save it till the end? We'll save it.
We'll save it at the end. We'll bring it up because I was watching like some videos of it, so we'll bring it up. So his second shot blows a MiG out of the sky, but there's one more MiG left. So the MiG is actually behind Maverick this time. And so Maverick wants the MiG to come closer to him so he can do this like braking maneuver again and shoot the MiG out of the sky. But then, which is exactly what happens. So the MiG thinks he's got him, but then Maverick like hits the brakes and peels up, and then Maverick gets behind him and destroys the MiG fighter basically. And it's a victory for the Top Gun pilots. So once again, Maverick requests another flyby, but gets denied by the guy in the tower. But he does it anyway again. The guy again.
He does it with Iceman. Like I did a dual flyby.
They did dual, yeah. And so on the ground, everyone's laughing and smiling and hugging each other. And then finally, Iceman has Maverick's respect.
You are still dangerous. You can be my wingman anytime.
Bullshit. You can be mine.
Yeah, so there's still a little bit of defiance in Maverick, but at the same time, there's like this mutual respect. It's not a personal beef. It's like there's a real reason behind what Iceman was saying before, and Maverick's standoffishness with everybody. So it's never personal with these guys. Like it's just just a normal type of conflict. It's not that serious. So yeah, Iceman gets a nice send off in the movie. So he's not just a bad guy, also a character that the audience may be turned off by. Like once he gives Maverick that respect, I think he elevates himself a great deal within the audience. And so after we get that scene with Iceman, we see Maverick throwing Goose's dog tags out of the Indian Ocean, just as a symbol that it's time to move on.
I remember, like, asking our dad at the time, like, why is he throwing the dog tags and is he throwing it to heaven where Goose is and stuff like that? Yeah, that really affected me, that death. Goose, no.
That's funny.
It's weird.
Yeah, heavens and the ocean.
I was like, he threw it up.
So ultimately, Maverick is like, he wants to be a Top Gun instructor. Doesn't he talk to Viper? Does he tell Viper he wants to be a Top Gun instructor at the end?
I don't think so. I thought he's just sitting in the bar, isn't
he? Yeah. Well, that's the next scene. Yeah.
Oh no! It was what's the commander's name from the start? The ball guy.
Oh, Stinger. Yeah, Stinger. So he tells Stinger. That's right. So he has one last meeting with Stinger, and it's like Stinger's like, "What are you going to do? In the future?" It's like, I want to be a Top Gun instructor. So yeah, and then they have a bit of a laugh about it. And then we cut to a bar in Fightertown, USA. And the jukebox plays You've Lost That Love and Feeling as Maverick sits alone at the bar. But then it's Charlie. She's lurking around the bar. And they sort of had this banter that rehashes the crash and burn conversations from earlier in their relationship. And you get the impression that they sort of live happily ever after. And then, just like Ghostbusters, the end credits has the faces of the main actors when they flash their name on the screen, which is always fun in an 80s movie. And then that's it. That's Top Gun. So, excellent film overall. Wait. Let's get into this Top Gun gameplay.
When I was watching the movie, they played the Top Gun theme, and the first thing I think of is the Top Gun NES game. The
Exactly.
Nintendo Entertainment System.
Yeah, because that was an important game for us growing up. So that's actually pretty good for the time. In terms of graphics. Mission 1, training for the next mission. That makes sense. It's a missile type. I remember missile types was fun to like figure out. And then like the sound effects
Man,
in this game.
40 missiles?
It's like
I think it was the menu. Was it the menu screen? That's where they play the Top Gun theme music.
Mm.
And
like
these,
all this
sound
information
effects
like
comes back
altitude, speed,
information.
and radar, and like your position and fuel. Like there's so much going on in this game.
Yeah, what is this? A speed run?
No, it's just a playthrough. Well, I want to skip to the landing. You remember the landing? Like that was pretty hard. Like it wasn't that easy.
Landing was hard, and the refueling in the air was hard.
Yeah,
Remember
we gotta see a refueling.
Yeah, that's hard.
To the up. I remember that.
Man, it was always 50-50 if I landed this thing.
Yeah, it wasn't easy at all. And so when it,
you can.
we'll
You don't know until that little cutscene if you landed it properly or not.
Yeah, so this is refueling. This is hard. I think this is harder than landing because you got to get that pipe into the little hole thing. Because it's all about speed and like position.
Looks like he's
And then
playing
you
it
get
on an
this-
emulator, isn't he? Oh, maybe not.
I don't know. They can fight like boats and stuff as well.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah,
They got to shoot down like the rocks. Like that explosion sound effect was pretty common in NES games at the time. Yeah, that's the Top Gun game. Yeah, it was fun. We played that game a lot, and then we sort of, I guess, related to that would be a game like Desert Strike on the SNES. It was sort of introduced like a three-dimensional.
There was another game called Stealth or something.
Stealth.
It had like stealth bombers, I think.
The NES.
Maybe it was Super Nintendo even. Can't remember. Maybe it's something else I'm thinking of.
There's a game called Stealth ATF on NES. Well, I don't.
Oh, that could be it. Is it like yellow background and just the silhouette of like a stealth bomber or something?
Well, I can show you. Well, I don't recall this game. Maybe you do.
Oh yeah, that's it.
Is it?
Yeah,
I don't remember it at all.
Yeah. I don't think we played it, or I don't think we owned it, but I do remember it. Yeah.
Okay. But Desert Strike is a really important game. Like I'm just talking about war games with vehicles.
No, Desert Strike was awesome. Started off in the desert with the Apache helicopter.
Yeah.
And then I think like the next installations, there's the part 2, part 3, then they started putting in different vehicles and stuff.
Yeah.
Man, I remember playing it on the Mega Drive and like there's some bits of slowdown or when there's too many too many enemies on the screen and stuff. But it's such a cool game. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of cool, this was Top Gun. An excellent snapshot of the 80s. A snapshot of Tom Cruise's career at the start of his A-list career in Hollywood. His $1 million smile, his charisma. So everyone should check it out, especially if you want to watch Top Gun Maverick, which I need to watch.
Oh, you haven't watched it yet? Yeah,
have you watched
it? Yeah, I watched it.
Oh, you
Yeah,
did?
you gotta check it out. Yeah, it's got Goose's son in it.
Oh,
Gotta watch
Goose's.
it for Goose's son.
I suppose in this time you would have sons of characters. Like in Creed, you've got Drago's son, right?
Drago's son and
Creed
and
2.
Creed's son.
Creed 2, you
Yeah,
got
yeah.
Drago's son. So it's that
I
era.
I haven't even watched any of the Creeds.
I watched Creed 1. I liked it.
It's supposed to be really good. I haven't watched it yet.
It's an interesting take on it's different to Rocky, which is fine.
Yeah.
It's its own type of movie. But yeah. Anyway, do you have any final words for Top Gun?
Yep, definitely love Top Gun. Check it out. Full of action. Special effects is top notch, even though it's 30 years old. It's beautifully shot, really impressive visually. So yeah, definitely highly recommend.
Highly recommended. Okay, check out Top Gun and Top Gun Maverick. Okay. Well, you can tune in next week. I'm pretty sure that we have lined up a Bruce Lee classic, Enter the Dragon.
In 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks. That's right, in 2 weeks. So join us then. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel, and we'll see everyone next time. Take care.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Later.
See you later.